delighted to be joined by Topher White, CEO and founder of Rainforest Connections today. But before we start, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
So my name is Topher from Rainforest Connection. We're a nonprofit tech startup based here in San Francisco. But our focus is kind of all over the world. We're trying to build partnerships and technology that can help fight deforestation and generally lead to environmental protection around the world. Because there's people there on the ground who can make a big difference if they have the right tools and the right support from afar.
Cool. So can you go into a little bit of detail about where the idea of Rainforest Connection came from and just sort of where the idea sort of stemmed from for you?
Yeah, so we're best known for sort of acoustic monitoring, listening to these natural places for threats. We take these old smartphones, the ones people throw away, and we put them high up in trees in the remote rainforest with solar panels and powerful microphones. They listen to all the sounds of the forest, they stream that up to the cloud, and we can pick out the sounds of threats like chainsaws, logging trucks, sometimes gunshots, and send alerts to local partners who can show up and stop it. This all kind of started when I went to Indonesia about 6 years ago to kind of as a volunteer to work at this gibbon rehabilitation center where they were releasing gibbons off in the wild, but they were spending a lot of their time and money trying to ward off illegal logging in a really small area. And that was when I sort of thought that acoustic monitoring using old smartphones could be a great way to help them not have to walk through the forest looking for threats. Built it for them, it worked, and quickly figured out other people would use it too.
It's very impressive. Obviously, you're extremely busy with all these different technologies in different countries. What does a sort of normal week for you look like?
Oh, well, the good news is that there's a solid team at Rainforest Connection really doing the most important stuff. Although, I'm CEO, a lot of my work still involves field work. So I'd say that, 4 out of 5 weeks I'm off in the forest, in the rainforest. So, South America, Africa, Southeast Asia, setting up new projects and partnerships, because really understanding how it gets used by people on the ground is really important for us. It's still pretty complicated. So, my job involves going there, meeting with them, trekking off into the forest, walking for hours up and down hills, climbing to the tops of trees, usually like 100, 150 feet up,
Wow.
putting up our systems up there so they can listen, coming back down and training people how to use it, and then of course making sure they do, and figuring out what's wrong with what we build, in case we need to fix it directly for them. So I still spend a lot of my time in the field, but the rest of our team is working hard on improving the software, hardware, and general systems that we have all the time. So our team is not so much based in San Francisco. They're kind of all over the world.
Sure.
And it's pretty cool to know that I've been working with these people doing really awesome stuff for 5 years and still haven't met them yet. So there's a lot of good people on this team.
Yeah, and still nice to be so sort of incredibly hands-on after the company being around for so long as well and being, like you say, very sort of field-based. So can you kind of elaborate a little bit on how AI is sort of being used in your work and sort of touch a little bit on it?
Oh, yeah. So, the thing about acoustics, so we're dealing with sound.
Sure.
In terms of the way the people generally understand the world, sound matters, but it's still very visual, right? So when you think about environmental protection, people always think about using cameras or satellite images. But it turns out that in the forest, where you can't see more than 20 feet in front of you because of the trees, sound is a really powerful tool. And nature kind of is adapted to this. That's why when you're there, it's so noisy. But the thing about sound is that it's temporal. You can't listen to tons of sound all at once. You can only listen to it over time. So it's not really feasible for people to be the ones looking for these threats. And that's where AI really comes into it. We originally built the system without AI, just sort of harmonic detection of chainsaws and trucks and things like that. But quickly realized that AI was a great way to pick out the real subtleties. And that's just for threats. So we have AI, CNNs that are basically analyzing all the audio as it comes in, including past audio, and looking for things like chainsaws, trucks, gunshots, and the rest. But increasingly, what we're finding is that if you can show up and stop loggers on the spot, maybe a couple times, they're going to go away for a while. And then we have these amazing, huge data sets coming in of these really vibrant, natural, precious places. And so we're increasingly leaning towards using AI for bioacoustic research. How can we study what's happening in nature over long periods of time very precisely using AI? And that's what the partnerships we have right now are all about. Nice.
So you kind of touched on some of the triggers, be it chainsaw activity, gunshots, etc. Can you kind of run us through the process of what the post-notification process is once you get these sort of triggers?
Yeah, so for us, we're looking for a bunch of different things. Every place has a different kind of danger vector. And the partnerships are important there. They're the only ones who can do anything with that data. So we built something we call the Ranger app, which we put in the hands of not just authorities, but also local people on the ground. So they can get an alert when a chainsaw goes off. They're able to both validate the data and know where it's happening and hopefully respond. So it's about closing that loop so that we can both incentivize and know whether people themselves are actually going to respond and do something about it. Because the truth is that it's often very, very dangerous for these people, and we can sympathize with that. So if they need more support, we need to understand what's needed and help them get it done. So for us, it's about the full closed loop of software solutions and also direct support that we give to them to make sure that they can do this hard work for us of protecting these areas. Nice. But again, it's also not just about threat detection and response. That is sometimes the most difficult thing to do when you really have to shore up support. So again, with these live audio streams coming out of the forest, we can also make it possible for any one of the phones we put up in the trees, these guardians we call them, there's a live stream coming from the forest. So anyone around the world can listen in to what's happening right now in the remote rainforest and any of the places that we're monitoring, which is right now about 12 countries. So this is a stream from Sumatra. Likewise, there's streams coming from Ecuador, Peru, Brazil. I mean, any of the places that we're operating, anyone can listen in. And so that turns everyone out there, although the AI is really good for picking things out, everyone becomes their own kind of monitor of the forests, and we can eventually crowdsource the insights on AI as well.
Nice. It's nice to make it so open source as well, so that everyone can kind of feel like they're contributing.
Well, it's Rainforest Connection, right? Like, what's the best way to protect these remote places with no transparency? It's to connect them to the rest of the world. Because sometimes people there don't realize the rest of us care about what's happening there, and when they find that out, they can really be motivated to do something to protect it.
Yeah, and kind of on that theme of collaboration, how important are the sort of partnerships and connections with the people on the ground to your work specifically?
I mean, it's the most important thing, right? I mean, we can build technology all we want, but if no one's using it to protect the forest, then we're just pretending. And so, but again, you can build something in Silicon Valley, you can build something in America, you can build something in Europe, but if you haven't taken it out to the middle of nowhere, you really don't know whether it's going to work. Sure. And so that has sort of become our specialty, is how do we build these technology tools, these tech tools that people on the ground will use, and that they can actually feed back into the system. So that app is important. They can validate it. They can become almost users of the system to help improve our models, our AI models. And so for us, that matters a lot. Cool.
And you kind of touched on some of the countries that you're in, obviously having to also go back to countries that may see sort of an increase or expansion of problem. What's your sort of plan? Where are you looking to expand to next?
Well, for every partnership that we start on the ground, we take it really seriously. We don't necessarily have an exit plan for these places.
Sure.
Once we get in there and we start a relationship with locals, if it's working, we have to keep going on it, because it matters if it's protected now and if it's protected 5 years from now and 10 years from now. So for us, it is, how do we scale that up? We're trying our best, and how do we build actually self-sustaining models? Because ultimately, every conservation solution is local. There's no such thing as like a global conservation solution, because ultimately people on the ground have to be the ones to care for it, because the rest of us don't have a right or ability to do anything about what's happening there in these places. So that is the most important thing. How do we maintain these partnerships and make it incentive enough that other groups want to emulate them? But for us, it's also about how do we build entirely new sort of economies around what's happening with this data. And so, threat detection really matters. That matters to people on the ground. But if scientists and the rest of us can be made to care about what's happening there, using AI to pull out insights of species, of ecology of the forest, and almost build a tailored experience around what's happening on the other side of the planet, we can make the entire world really become a part of what's happening there, and make it less about like YouTube videos of orangutans and more about people being connected to the moment that orangutans show up there, and knowing the rest of the world can be a part of that too.
Nice. So what kind of challenges are you currently facing in your work? What are the sort of main roadblocks? I know you kind of touched on there, but the sort of main roadblocks to expansion for Rainforest Connection going forward?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it is about finding, we have to find ways to make the installations of these sensors up in the forest, assuming that we go for more of that, simpler, because at the moment, it still is a pretty big deal to climb a tree and put them up. That's not unworkable. We can get there. And so for us, that is slowing us down. I mean, but at the same time, we want to move more towards a scalable model that allows people themselves to push these solutions out. For us, funding has been an issue, but now that we are building these new platforms and people, the system has been proven to work and more people want it, we're doing a little better there. But for us, I think it's about simplicity of use and almost like a scalable model where we don't have to be involved in the dissemination of it.
Sure. I mean, like you say, with the simplicity of use, is there a danger that some people, potentially from the outside looking in, could worry that this might be sort of overly complicated, and then you're maybe putting their minds at ease by simplifying it slightly?
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much about impediment to adoption from that. People don't seem worried about the complications of it because the use of it is pretty easy.
Sure.
It's the setup and the installation of it that can be complicated, and also the maintenance and it's at the moment we're still the ones who go out to the field to set it up. That matters because it's okay for us to go out there and set it up if it lasts for 2 or 3 years, and you have this constant monitoring in these really remote areas for that long. But for us to be covering millions of hectares of forest, we need to be realistic about letting other people do that too.
Is there a specific sort of shelf life on some of these devices? Is it a case of constant monitoring, or do you have certain sort of time inferences that you go back and check that they're all still completely in working order?
Well, I mean, the cool thing is that when you are 24/7 monitoring in real time, the moment something disappears.
Yeah.
The rainforest is a horrible place to put any kind of hardware. That's why it's a good thing we're using old cell phones, because man, they just last. We're using primarily phones that are sometimes over 10 years old, and they're working really hard. They're sending data over these long distances, they're processing data, they're doing all these things, and they just keep going and going and going. That's not to say that things don't go wrong.
Sure.
Hardware goes down all the time.
Yeah.
That's the realistic element of what we do. But yeah, I'd say that the forest is a difficult place to deploy any technology, and being face to face with those realities, that's our job too.
And then just kind of touch on this because I'm just interested in it. In terms of the actual installation, you're talking about climbing huge sort of trees and placing them at the top. Do you kind of have anyone on the ground that's trying to interfere with these, or is it even possible? Is there so sort of high up? Or?
Well, in all the years we've been doing it, there's only been one case early on when someone actually took one, and that was because we put them at ground level.
Okay.
The good news is that now we climb high in trees, which complicates the ability to both get to them and install them, of course. But that means they get better sunlight, because again, that's important. They get better cell phone reception, and they're pretty hard to see. So we haven't had situations where people take them. The biggest threat to our devices is not so much people as it is the animals of the forest. And I don't mean the animals in terms of monkeys or birds. It's really the insects. The insects are they rule the forest.
Yeah.
They'll deconstruct anything you put out there if they can, or if they want to. And so every new forest we take it to, we discover some new arms race that we have to get into with insects in the forest itself.
Nice. And just before I let you go, where can we keep up with both your work and Rainforest Connection's work going forward?
Sure. Well, one of the best ways to do it is to download our app. So download the Rainforest Connection app. Just search for it on your app store of choice. The cool thing about that is that it's more about tailoring what's happening in the rainforest to you. So you can listen to any of our live streams from around the world, and you can hear what's happening in Sumatra, Ecuador, Peru, Brazil, South Africa, Ghana soon. All these sort of things that bring the forest to you in a real-time way. And apart from that, check us out on social media. Rainforest Connection. So give us a search.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for your time today.
Thank you so much. It's been an amazing conference.
Yeah, excited to see your work going forward.
Thank you.
Thanks.